This time we'll call our workshop to order, and in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meetings and agendas were posted and furnished to all news media and persons requesting notification. And at this time, if y'all would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by our invocation. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Vice Chair, would you give us our invocation?
Let us bow our heads. Our Heavenly Father, we come this afternoon. We ask in your guidance. We are here to do what is best for the taxpayers of Jasper County. It's not about us, Lord. It's about our people. We ask that you bless all of them that has worked so hard to prepare for this meeting. These and other blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to welcome everybody with us. We have our stakeholders and community members and also members of our Planning Commission. And I would like to recognize them. If all of our Planning Commission members, Chairman Pinckney and everybody, if y'all would stand up, Mr. Bramlin, Mr. Jenkins. Thank y'all for being with us today. Good to see y'all. At this time, we'll call for approval of the agenda, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Our workshop today is to discuss the proposed ordinance to amend Jasper County zoning ordinance Article 5 zoning district regulations to add 2 new primary zoning districts, rural preservation RP10 and village commercial, 1 new overlay district, U-Haul overlay district, Article 6 use regulations to add uses for the RP10 and VC zoning districts, Article 7 primary districts to add lot size, lot width, and setback requirements for RP10 and VC zoning districts, amend lot width requirements in the residential, community, commercial, general commercial, and industrial development and mixed business zoning districts. Amend, is that riparian? Riparian, okay. Riparian buffer requirements and add design standards for the village commercial zoning district, Article 8, purpose districts to add design standards and requirements for the U-Haul Oakity Cultural Heritage Overlay District. Article 11, conditional uses, Article 15, sign regulations, Article 22, small lot subdivisions, and amend Jasper County official zoning map to rezone some properties within the U-Haul Broad River planning area to the rural preservation 10 zoning district and the village commercial zoning district and other matters related thereto. It's a lot. So I'd like to welcome everybody here to this workshop. This is an opportunity for us to work together with the Planning Commission and others. I know some of us on council have some questions for Lisa and Denise, and we will Lisa, kind of turn that over to you a little bit, because I know you've got a slide, or you and Denise do, and we'll start with that.
We were going to have Mr. Grabowski give a presentation.
Sure.
And pass it out to y'all so you can
Yes,
follow.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of council.
So,
it's a pleasure to be here. So I've just put together a little bit of information. I know it is a lot, so put together some information that I hope will help to explain some of the provisions in a little bit more detail. Before we kind of dive into the details, that might be helpful just for the benefit of everyone here. To give a little bit of a quick synopsis of how we got to where we are right now. As you know, the U-Haul Broad River planning area really is an area that has been a focus for Jasper County for quite some time now, and County Council adopted a moratorium in order to allow time for the county to start the comprehensive plan update process, but more particularly to look at development standards and see if some updates might be needed. This work, of course, built from the work of the Broad River Task Force previously. As stated in the moratorium, the primary goal of that moratorium was to address concerns over the impact new subdivisions, commercial and residential development will have on road infrastructure, evacuation routes, streetscapes, traffic congestion, stormwater, open space, natural habitats, and the quality of life in this area. So that's pulled directly from that language. We started this process last fall, so I guess just about a year ago, with a presentation here at County Council, really focused more on comprehensive plan, looking at updating our comprehensive plan and having an opportunity to work with the community to confirm that the guidance in the comprehensive plan is still valid and still reflects the values and vision of the community. So we had a steering committee meeting in October, community meeting, and also in late October, about a year ago, we established a project website. We conducted stakeholder interviews and focus groups, and we launched an online survey. In the beginning of this year, I came back to you with an update through a part of your retreat process in January. We gave an update through the joint meeting that was held with Jasper County, Hardeeville, and Ridgeland in February. We held another steering committee meeting in March, as well as another community meeting. And much of that work really focused on the comprehensive plan, kind of that big picture vision for the community. And what we heard through that process was an affirmation that the vision of the comprehensive plan still held true, and that there was still this desire of the community to maintain the rural character of Jasper County, recognition and appreciation of the value of your historic, natural, and cultural resources, and the need to look at some of the development standards. So that's kind of where that transition comes in the middle at the bottom of the slide, is building on the input through that process. Then we looked at how do we translate that input into the development regulations. So that's what we worked on really at the beginning part of this year in earnest. We came to the Planning Commission in June and held a workshop with the Planning Commission to talk about some of the kind of big picture ideas that we were exploring. And then came to the Planning Commission later in June to present some of the draft ordinances for their review and consideration. Came before County Council in mid-July. We heard both from the Planning Commission and from County Council the importance of making sure the community was notified aptly. And so Lisa and her staff have worked very hard at posting a lot of properties around the community and also mailing letters to affected property owners. We held a community open house on August 22nd. It was very well attended and received some valuable feedback through that process. We then met again with the Planning Commission on August 28th and reviewed so at their first Planning Commission meeting, they had made some recommendations and modifications that they would like to see. So we shared those back with the Planning Commission at their August meeting and worked through some additional conversation items with them. That was also the first time that we presented the rural small lot subdivision, which we will share with you today as well. Of course, we are here now, the County Council workshop, and we have a public hearing scheduled in September. So that's a quick synopsis of where we've been and where we're heading in the immediate future. This is similar to the slide that you saw last time we were here, really highlighting a summary of the proposed updates. In particular, Article 5, where we have the new zoning districts, that's the most substantial modification that's being proposed, with the creation of the Rural Preservation 10 district zoning, the Village Commercial, and also the U-Haul Overlay District. We have simplified the name of that overlay district to simply be the U-Haul Overlay District, so it's not quite a mouthful, such a mouthful. We did look at some of the standards as far as uses. We also looked at the Village Commercial standards, what that would include in order to maintain the character. The Village Commercial, again, is intended to provide commercial uses that would serve the immediate neighborhoods and community. The Special Purpose District is where we have the specific details of the overlay district. And then Article 22 is the one that is new before you today, and that is the rural small lot subdivision. So I'd like to spend a minute talking about this new article with you, and if at any time, obviously, you have questions or comments, don't hesitate to stop me. So the purpose of this article, again, is to maintain the character and heritage of the rural landscape by providing flexibility through alternative standards for the subdivision of rural lands in Jasper County in exchange for the protection of open space. The images that you see on the screen are ones that we have been sharing throughout our entire community engagement process. They actually are in your current comprehensive plan, and this is a concept that is carried forward from your current comprehensive plan. Sometimes these are called conservation subdivisions. They can go by different names. But the idea, again, is in exchange for protecting open space, there's some flexibility that's given on the development standards to allow the development to be somewhat more clustered together and also more intentionally planned around those sensitive natural areas. And so the images that you see there are from a gentleman by the name of Randall Arant, who really pioneered this way of thinking back in probably the late 90s when he wrote an entire book about this practice and its benefit and use across rural landscapes.
Excuse me?
Yes, sir.
Can I- On the rural small lot division, how many acres would that, was there a minimum acreage that you need for that?
So the way that we have it structured right now, this would apply to properties that are zoned RP10. So any property that's zoned RP10 could go forward through this rural small lot subdivision standard. One of the things that we have had some discussion around, so we think that there are some clarifications and tweaks that need to be made to this section, and that's the benefit of having this workshop with you today and also being able to have those conversations with the Planning Commission. So right now, it's simply RP10 properties.
Well, that's fine. That's for development. Now, and this has been a whole thing with me, is you have 10 acre, for every 10 acres, you can have one house,
Yes, sir.
right? Now we're saying something a little different, but that's fine for a developer. But what happens when a person comes in that owns the 10 acres, and let's say he wants to have a friend, not a family member, because that's another situation. A friend comes in and says, "I want to build a house there. I'll sell you 10 acres, 5 acres, or 2 acres, whatever it is." That's not allowed, or is that going to be
He
allowed?
could do that. If
What?
he puts half, that property owner could do that if they put half of that property in conservation.
In conservation?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I've got an example that it's a little bit larger scale just because it's a little bit easier to see, I think. But I've got an example I'll walk through that might help to explain how the process would work.
Because I think that's part of this 10 acres for one house is a problem. I mean, people say, well, how can I have 10 acres in one house, and all of a sudden I pass away, and my family, how can they separate it? It can't be all family. My example that gave me is, you have 10 acres, one person on there, that's fine. He passes away, and he gives it to his 2 kids. Right? Now, his one kid is 70 years old in a nursing home, right? What does he do?
So we've also made some changes to the family estate
Well,
section of the code
The
as well.
the other person doesn't want that. What I'm saying is, it's limited to family, it's not limited to, what can he do to get rid of not get rid of the land, I shouldn't say that, but how does he get rid of that land? Yeah, get rid of that land, because the other sibling doesn't want it. It's gonna go outside the family. So what happens, is he stuck with what?
So I think this is really a fundamental question for council to think about as we move forward with this proposal, because if the goal of this initiative is to manage growth and development, we have to set up standards that we want to make sure that existing property owners can utilize their property, which is why we've gone back and looked at the family estates. But the rules have to apply to everyone in the same way. Now, do we want to do something with smaller parcels than we're doing with some of the larger ones? Maybe that's a conversation we have. Maybe we have a conversation about how we tweak this. So I think there are ways that we can look to make tweaks if we understand what it is that the council wants to achieve and what the priorities are. So if you'll let me walk through this,
Okay.
it might be helpful just to see how this works and
Thank
if it's
you.
in the right direction. And if you say, this is a totally wrong direction, throw it out, we don't like it at all, then we're going to take that feedback and be able to hopefully come back with what is in the right direction. Is that?
That's fine. I
Okay.
just had that question.
Yes, sir. Okay. So the way that this works, and I've got some graphics to explain this, it requires protection of natural areas plus at least 50% of the developable area. Okay? So if you have areas that can't be developed because they are wetlands or in an easement or otherwise not available for development, those are taken out. And in exchange for preserving open space, the lots can be smaller and clustered. So some of the key terms, so the parent parcel is your existing lot of record. So that's where you start. The open space preservation area is the area that's identified, which would be deed restricted, that could not be developed in the future. So that's the give and take of this approach. The base site area, which is basically your developable area, is calculated as shown below. So you start with your parent parcel, you remove the acreage of wetlands and water bodies, you remove right-of-way, existing rights-of-way and easements, you remove land that's separated by water or marsh, and you remove any previously dedicated open space. That's probably not going to be very often you would have that situation. That gives you your base site area. Your open space preservation area must be at least 50% of your base site area. And I'm going to walk through the math and show you an example here in just a minute. The base site area that is not being protected as open space can then be developed according to the development standards on the chart at 1 unit per 5 acres. The minimum lot size would be an acre, and you can see the other requirements there. So that's where the flexibility and the trade-off comes in. So basically, you're taking half the property that normally could be developed and preserving it in perpetuity, along with any of the wetlands and other properties that are not developable. So if we do a case study of what that might look like. So this is not an actual piece of property. It's not even in Jasper County. If this is an existing parcel, the orange line going through is an existing road, and say this property is 500 acres. Under the RP10 zoning, which is the 10-acre lots, get 50 lots, okay? And this is, again, conceptual. Under the rural lot subdivision design, you would take out the wetland shown in green to determine your base site area. You would take out the area that's shown in green. You would take out the easement that runs through the property, shown in purple. And then you would take out the right-of-way for the road that's running through the property that's shown in blue. So in this example, those properties, the wetlands plus the right-of-way plus the easement, equal 150 acres. So you're then left with a base site area of 350 acres. Then you look at your base site area. You put 50% of that in open space, so that's 175 acres. Plus the 150 acres that cannot be developed because of wetlands, easements, and right-of-ways. And you have, of the 500-acre original parcel, you have 325 acres that would not be developed. The density would allow 1 unit per 5 acres of the base site area, or 70 units. So in this scenario, you could get a few more units. You could get 20 more units over 500 acres, and those lots could be smaller in exchange for the preservation of that open space. Questions?
Just going around with some thoughts. I don't see the like the smaller landowners, whether that's 50 acres or 75 or 100 acres, is really, maybe we should just exclude them from that, because they're, in my mind, this is, the RP10 is to be focused more on the larger landowners that are going to develop, you know, a 1,000-acre parcel, for example. I think that's where that RP10 would apply more so than a small property owner. Somebody at like heirs property, or property owners that are wanting to transfer their property to their kids, grandkids, and keep it in the family. It's my personal opinion on that.
Okay.
Property being grandfathered in.
So so this is in the RP10. In the overlay district, we also identify areas, and this is where it relates back to your comprehensive plan. So areas that are within those transition areas of our future land use map could then be rezoned to residential if they're currently in RP. And those are the areas that are closer to existing infrastructure and can better support development. As far as the family properties, I'll jump ahead a little bit and show you part of the Planning Commission feedback that we wanted to share with you was for family estates. So in the previous draft for family estates, if the zoning of the property was RP10, the ratio for family was 1 unit per 10 acres. We have since revised that to be 1 unit per 5 acres with a maximum of 20 units. So in the current RP, the maximum number of units for a family estate is 12. In the RP10, the maximum number of units in the RP10 would be 20. So if you have a very large family, you can actually accommodate more of your family in the proposed draft in the RP10 through the family estate provision.
So that's through marriage, adoption, or blood relative. That
Sorry,
does
correct, please.
qualifications for that.
Right, yes. In the family, whether it's through adoption, marriage, or blood.
Mm-hmm.
And the trigger point for, I guess, the heirs property actually is the lineage of 30 years or more for the estate, family estate.
The ownership of the
30
property.
year
30 years, yes.
ownership.
Yes, sir.
You want to go ahead through?
Yes, sir. I can go through the rest.
Throwing that out there.
I will move over to some of the Planning Commission feedback that we received. So there were a couple of uses that we reviewed with the Planning Commission, and based on their recommendation, have revised the draft to reflect golf courses and country clubs, as well as marinas, moving to a conditional use. In the earlier draft, they were listed as permitted, and the conditions we talked about, for example, for golf courses, would be something along the lines of a designation of a conservation-minded golf course through the Audubon Society or something like that, where you are promoting wildlife, you're minimizing the use of pesticides and chemicals, again, in keeping with the idea of protection of water quality and maintenance of natural resources. In the marinas, we had some discussion about limiting the size of any marinas that might be included in those conditions.
Do you even have to have those as an allowable use, or is that?
No, sir. No, sir. This is,
I don't think
so.
anybody wants a golf course or a marina in there. At least I don't. That's just my opinion.
Okay. So it's, again, these are new districts, and so.
Yeah, and I would just say, you know, we
Nobody
had
wants a marina on
received
it.
earlier comments from like the Coastal Conservation League, basically saying maybe marinas shouldn't be considered, and golf courses, perhaps if we did it, would be conditional. At the open house meeting, we did also receive comments, believe it or not, from someone in the Coosahatchee area where they have water, they have property right on the water, and there's really not a public boat landing there, and they said they would like to have a marina. But y'all are the decision makers, and it's gonna be totally up to you.
I don't see a marina being sustainable in Coosahatchee.
And a boat ramp and a marina are two separate entities.
Yeah.
Excuse, just on it, what is a marina? I mean, a definition?
So a marina, I don't have I don't know if it's, anyways, would typically be a commercially operated facility that would allow access for storage and boats, boat slips, et cetera.
And
It's defined.
being naive of this whole stuff is, let's say I have a slip, and I guess they have the lifts, the boat lifts. You have 3 boat lifts, let's say, and he rents one. Would that be considered a marina?
So I think probably the trigger for a marina would be that it's a commercial enterprise. You can have marinas that do or do not have a boat lift. You can have marinas that do or do not have
So
boat
if you-
storage, that do or do not have dry storage. So there's really a wide range, I think, of marinas that would meet the definition of a marina, and that's why when we had discussion with the Planning Commission, we said maybe a very small scale marina could be palatable, but if it's not palatable to the county council, then
It's just my 2
we can
cents,
change
but
that to
We'll figure it out.
not permitted.
Let's keep
Yeah,
it.
and
Okay.
we're just really trying to keep up with the comments
Mhm.
we receive and make sure everybody has a voice.
Yeah.
And we are listening to people, whether it's pro or con.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yes, sir. So some of the other feedback we heard from the Planning Commission in a couple of things were minor, just grammatical. Do you have that list, Lisa? It's probably better. There you go. Yeah, that one. So one of the provisions that was in the overlay district was a separation of the engineered wastewater systems from rivers and wetlands of 2,000 feet. That's been modified to 1,000 feet.
I got a question about that too.
I was just gonna tell you, because I don't think I told you, I think it was intended for conventional systems to be reduced to 100 as well, but we didn't have that at the time.
Okay.
Didn't
Okay.
tell planning commission.
Okay.
That's it.
I know we were contacted by an engineer, I think he was from DHEC, which is formerly DHEC, I forget what it's called
Yeah,
now, but.
what are they called now?
it's on-
Well, he was actually from on-site engineering,
Yeah.
on-site septic engineering. He actually works for that company, and they do engineered site designs. And everything they do, because it is an engineered systems, they have to file with DHEC. So he was going to invite David Vaughn here to speak to us. David was from DHEC.
I think his concerns, because he emailed me, was about I guess the 24 inches between the water table and the septic area itself. And then also about even the 1,000-foot setback, though, if there's certain situations where you might have to get I don't know if it was an easement or permission from maybe a neighbor's property to actually get that
I think he was more
survey done.
concerned if the wetland were 2 or 3 properties over. he
Right,
now
you'd have to
has
go through your neighbor's property.
Survey from there to this property.
Right.
To determine how far away it is.
Which may not happen if the property owner, neighboring property owner says no.
Mhm.
So that was some concerns that I think we need
Okay.
to do research
We're
on
working on
and make sure.
setting that meeting up.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I have spoken to the DHEC ladies that do the strategic initiative back in, I guess it was May, and talked about some of the problems with the engineered systems they had in Berkeley County, the failures that are mentioned in that article that's there. The setback measurement for the critical line may have some problems, practical problems in doing it, but there are workarounds that we're exploring, such as having our GIS. The mean high watermark is readily available on US, whatever the Geodetic Society people are. So you can plot those out and then use the GIS to determine where you are and through there. The point that was trying to be made was to avoid engineered systems, which are sometimes prone to failure because they're put in bad areas to begin with for soil, to keep them from failing, discharging into ditches that get into the tributaries, that get into the creeks that cause the problem, because that's what we heard. But that's what we're trying to address with this, is create a sufficient buffer from the creeks and waterways to avoid having what happened over in May River, where the septic systems are overloaded, and they've now got high levels of fecal coliform in most of the water over there, so the oyster beds get closed down. That's what we're talking with, and we're trying to get more technical information about it, as far as what's something to measure from that's readily available. It doesn't require a real survey. I say a real survey, a person going out there and pulling, although it's easier to pull on a chain when I grew up, put the GPS stick in the ground to see where you are. But we're trying to look at that to address both practical aspects of it and then the real impacts of what happens when a system fails.
Thank you.
I mentioned the family estate density chart, so that change we've already looked at. One of the recommendations was for family estates to allow them to subdivide 1 acre parcel, but keep the overall density. So this would be in the family estate provision, that they could subdivide a parcel off at 1 acre, but keep the overall density of 1 residence per 5 acre. The addition of Article 22, we did have some changes that we reviewed with them on the actual map. So if we have time, we're happy to review those with you as well. And then the last change from the Planning Commission was the revision of the RP10 lot size acreage from 10 acres to 5 acres. And when we had the last community meeting, we had one of the exhibits we had showed an example of 10 acre lots, 5 acre lots, et cetera. So the image that you see on the left is actually here in Jasper County, and is an example of 5 acre lots. So I think each of those are pretty much right at 5 acres. The image on the right is a larger development, not in Jasper County, that's also made up of 5 acre lots. And you know, it becomes a larger development. They're larger lots still, but it obviously increases in scale. And when you look at the natural systems, so this is the wetland overlay of an existing development, you can see what happens to the wetland system. It becomes chopped up into individual lots. And the challenge when you look at the integrity of a wetland system, when it starts to get chopped up into individual lots, it can start to erode at the edges, and the impacts of that erosion of the wetland on individual lots can be cumulative. So in other words, when a wetland is subdivided, the threshold for requiring a wetland permit, there are exemptions when you need a wetland permit. And if it's a small impact, there's no permit needed. There's also many exemptions for single-family properties from having to get a federal permit. So what was once an intact wetland system can become eroded if it is continually subdivided over time. And that's one of the benefits of the rural lot subdivision, is you maintain the permanent preservation and integrity of an entire system as opposed to it being subdivided over time. And then if you look at the floodplain for this area, you can see the additional challenges that exist when we have uniformity of lot sizes and not the flexibility to plan in accordance with the natural features of the land. And that really is the intent of that rural lot subdivision. I don't know that it's quite there yet, but that's what we're trying to achieve, is how can we balance allowing, develop some appropriate scale of development, and what is appropriate scale is a big question, but also maintaining these natural areas and the water quality, because these wetlands are so important. They are the filters for your rivers and streams. So I think that is the end of the actual presentation. I know there's lots to discuss. I hope that was helpful,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
go through whatever additional discussion.
I had one question, just to clarify, on the manufactured housing.
Yes, sir.
There's a minimum of a ½ acre per dwelling unit in the residential and community commercial district. Then it says a 1 acre parcel minimum. So,
Is this under the family estates?
11.7 page 23 and 28.
Conditions.
So you have to have at least 1 acre of property, is my, just to make sure I'm understanding that, in order to have,
Give us a second and we'll get there.
okay.
Here we go. Okay, is it 11,734?
Yes, ma'am. What, explain to me the allowable number of units. It says minimum of a half-acre dwelling unit in the residential community commercial district. 1 acre parcel minimum. So in order to have one mobile home or manufactured house, you have to have at least an acre. That's the minimum lot size?
Yes, and that's currently on our books now.
Right.
For residential zoning districts. If you were gonna have a second, manufactured house on your property, number one, it has to belong to a family member. It's for a family member. And then if you're zone residential, you have to have a minimum of 1 acre. The density is 1 per half acre,
So you could have 2 on 1 acre.
2 on 1 acre.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I
And there's some
understand.
other conditions you have to meet, yes.
Okay. And then there was,
So in rural preservation today, you have to have 2 acres to get the second one. You're not allowed a third one because that's deemed a home park.
I got you. And I got, my last question for now was on page 3 of 3, and it's under the stormwater management section. And I just, I guess the Soloco stormwater management standards are going to be applicable to all new residential subdivisions and non-residential developments. But it says, standards shall be reviewed to determine if standards creates unreasonable hardships on landowners within this district within 18 months of the adoption of this ordinance. Have we determined, we haven't fully determined if this creates unreasonable hardships on landowners, the stormwater, has that been determined yet? Because it says we had 18
We haven't
months.
determined that, and I think the intent there is, once it's implemented and we're, once you implement an ordinance, almost every ordinance we've ever amended, usually once we implement it, we find out a scenario comes up that we didn't think about. So I think that is just for us to be able to go back and look at and make sure it's working.
Gotcha.
If
Makes
I
sense.
could expand on that, having had some experiences with some master rezonings in other counties, when there's a big change, and in fact, the Soloco standards, when they first started being implemented in Beaufort County and other places, there were reviews to determine how is the actual effect on properties and stormwater quality being there, and have been periodic revisions to the standards and how you process those that you go through. So our suggestion is that with anything that you start off with, you kind of agree that you're going to look at it hard after it's implemented to see what's going on and bring back those items within a period of time to say, best of intentions, it either accomplished what we were trying to do was overly burdensome or didn't meet the standards that we need, so that you can see how it works. Because every community is a little different. We as staff have been talking about whatever's implemented, that we put a program in place so that within a year, or by the end of a year, 12 months, we bring back a report on what we have found in this application. So for consideration, again, at another workshop, more than likely, so the council can see what we've been hearing.
On the stormwater, we're going to use Soloco as the golden, but we just didn't we just do a study, or we're having a study done on stormwater that may not be with, what happens if the Soloco is not given, we're not going to follow that, we're going to do our own.
Soloco is the stormwater standards for development. That's one thing. The other thing we're doing is doing a comprehensive look at stormwater in general. That will be sort of defining projects that need to be accomplished to improve drainage, okay? And sort of the precursor of a potential program, stormwater management program.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, are we geared into that? And let's say Soloco is not what we want to do. We haven't approved it yet, have we?
No, sir.
No, so let's say we look at it and the study comes back and says, oh, this is stuff that should be changed. Are we locked into the Soloco, or are we locked into what we want?
Well, again, they're two different things. The Soloco is stormwater standards that developers would have to comply with, okay? When you change the land, you develop it, what are the standards that they're going to have to follow? That's one thing. The other thing that we're doing is a plan of natural drainage features. Do we need to do new ditching projects? Do we need to do cleanout projects? Do we need to do routing projects? All those kind of things, and defining specific construction projects that will help drainage in the whole area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just don't want to be tied into something that we haven't approved yet. That's all.
Well,
We can always-
that would be proposed, correct?
And we can always take a look at it and adopt the parts and pieces that we want from there. We don't have to adopt it as written, correct?
We could, and the only thing we're making reference to right now in the Soloco is for the U-Haul overlay district.
Correct.
So we can always amend that. If it's not working, we can remove it and, or we
Yeah.
can do bits, pieces, and parts like Councilman Riles said.
Yeah, if you don't, there's maybe some reporting requirements you don't want to get into, that kind of thing. Since it's voluntary, so yes, sir, we can pick and choose. And then, again, we want to remind you all, we'd like you to, whatever you adopt, to have an annual look back and how did it work, what didn't work, and then you can have that opportunity to review it then.
To Mr. Kemp's point about adopting portions of it, Mr. Rouse, some jurisdictions have carved out, as they change their stormwater from the Soloco, certain areas that they are concerned about. Generally, in the towns that are already built, they have infrastructure that's difficult to change. Impacts of redevelopment, infill, are somewhat different than raw, they're a lot different than raw land development. So it's trying to make sure that you've got all the permutations in there, which is why you want to have a review period when you see how did it actually work out when you started trying to build something.
Yeah, but Soloco, the reason I'm saying that is Soloco, I think there's only one municipality that has adopted it. There's not that many adopted that. There must be a reason we're not adopting something that we're referencing, that's all.
It was my understanding that Port Royal has adopted most of them. With Smithville, I thought the city of
Beaufort County implemented it almost right away, and then the town of Bluffton does too. They use it.
They use it, but they didn't adopt it, I don't think. I
I
don't know, it's never been an update, but when I go, they're always saying we should adopt it.
And they're still going through and reviewing too, because things have come up and engineers have sent in some scenarios to say, this is what you require, but it's not working. And so they have been making little tweaks and amendments to what is on the books.
That's just something to bring up to you, that's all.
Yeah.
I don't have to discuss it now, it's just,
Did Chairman Peeney, any comments that you'd like to make, or feedback from the planning commission you'd like to share with council, or anybody?
Just one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The thing that I had a concern that I didn't realize till our last workshop, the U-Haul overlay district covers rural areas that had already been established. And under the new guideline, the rules for them to develop, it's going to put a great burden on, like the Roseland area, Cherry Hill, Old House, all those areas, comes under the overlay district as well. And the new regulation, they would have to, as she said, in the offset, the regulation is not for one, it's for all. So when you were speaking about the manufactured housing and everything, especially like on the Roseland side, they close to the international water. Their setbacks and everything is going to be much greater than what it is now. That'll put a burden on those folks there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things we're looking at closely. We don't want to adversely affect the small property owners at all.
Also, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
For these Reverend Galloway, Alan Galloway called. And he said there's a sign in front of his property to be rezoned.
Yes.
Please explain that.
Yes, he is currently zoned community commercial. So most of the community commercial properties within the U-Haul overlay district are proposed to be rezoned to village commercial. So that's what the proposal is for his property, to go from community commercial to village commercial.
Okay, the difference,
Ma'am?
the difference.
The difference, so village commercial doesn't allow as many of the uses as community commercial, but it does allow commercial uses to support a rural neighborhood. And I would say one of the main differences is we're proposing a smaller scale, and also as far as a smaller scale as far as the type of building you'd build. We're saying 2,500 square feet for your heated area. You can still have porches, and another big part of it is that it has some design regulations to try and have that low country feel and kind of the type of architectural standards you see in the Pritchardville area, Highway 46. That's what we're trying to propose for the U-Haul overlay district, just keeping it a small scale so it'll fit into the community. As far as Mr. Galloway's property, it's already developed, so he is grandfathered in.
Okay, that's what
Yes, he doesn't have to, unless he's building something else, but I don't really think he has room to build
yeah.
anything
Not.
else.
But anyway, one day next week, if it's feasible with you and Andy, I would like to sit down and you explain it to him just like that, so he'll know
Yes.
what is happening, because you know, when it comes to property and land and stuff, and you up in the age, you get bent out of shape quick. So, and I think he will be all right, but we just need to sit down with him and explain it to him. So let me know, and then Andy can let him know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, just a couple things. I think a lot of this is confusing to the folks at large and folks in the community, but the simplest way, in my opinion, to do it is keep the RPs in, exempt the family land, and then kind of look at some of the verbiage in some of the village commercial. It just, to me, that makes good sense, and that's why we're here today.
Can I go?
What areas of village commercial you would like us to?
I think we need to look at all of it, but we need to make sure that it works for everybody. And that's all I have right at the moment.
I'd like to go back to the rural small lot. You know, we always, I think everybody on the dais here says, you know, we're worried about the small individual. Yet, we make allowances for development, but we don't make allowances for the small individual on that. So a person can have a big lot, I mean a big area, and he can develop something as long as he does a 50-50 deal. But what about the small guy that has 200 acres and he wants to sell an acre to somebody? Just one person. I mean, it's not a development. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you go before the planning commission, they're supposed to look at, make sure that it's right. And number two is, does it fit the area? Now, 10 acres, one house per 10 acres is fine, but there are some times when you can split that up to maybe 5 acres in a certain situation. It's don't make it hard and fast. You know, where we're talking about keeping the waterways, but if it's more towards 95 and over that way, the water is not the big problem yet, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's up to the planning commission to say, yes it is, no it isn't. To give it an option someplace along the line rather than be so hard and fast. It looks like, that's what it looks like to me. And what I find with this rural thing, it panders to the developer. We're saying, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but we don't actually say the same thing about the small individual that wants to settle in Jasper County. He's not looking to develop. He's looking to be in a rural area and all that. I mean, that's what we have to attach in there and broadcast that out to the people that we're doing that. So that's my 2 cents, I guess. But I just don't think that we look like, with that, we look like we're pandering to the developer rather than to the small person.
Well, in that scenario, you're incentivizing them to conserve property, and then it's kind of like, well, if you do that, then we're going to let you do 1 house per 5 acres instead of 1 house per 10 acres. So you're still getting, I guess that would be the original amount of density, but just on half of the property. So it's, I don't know, that might be too generous if we're trying to really curtail large-scale development and impact from an environmental and conservation standpoint. I don't know that incentivizing them to, I get the.
I don't really know how else you get people to put
That's something we need
property
to talk
up in
about
the
and figure.
conservation,
Yeah.
except to give them an incentive. I don't think
Well,
people just want to go do
I
that.
think that we have incentive. Well, if the future holds right, we will have incentives. We will be able to. We have money that will be available for incentives for conservation. So it could be. There's different ways of doing it. We have to look at. We don't have to look today. We have to look at tomorrow, I guess.
That's food for thought.
Sure.
I'm not, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to give you information that I think is relevant and to look at and to sell it.
Any other questions?
All right. Yes, I do have one question. If he's an RV in the 10 per 1, would that include maybe smaller districts, or that's going to carve out single-family homes?
Sorry, repeat that.
Okay. It's a very complicated question, really. RP10, right? Will there be, that's just going to have bigger acreage, right? It's include, not small, there's not going to be small acres included in that, small lots.
That's right. What we've done so far is anybody who does not have 10 acres, they're not included.
Okay. So they can build, if they own a piece of property, they can build as long as they go by the code. That's it.
Just the lot owners, the landowners that have 50, 100, 200, that want to pass it down to their family, that I'm mostly concerned with, to make sure that we're not adversely affecting those people who really want to, like heirs property, multi-generational. That's really my focus, personally. Well, I think this has been really good. I'd like to thank the Planning Commission members for being with us, and Ms. Grabowski and Lisa and staff and everybody for being here. We'll continue this. We're going to have some more workshops, some more public hearings to try to make sure that we're doing our homework and try to make this the best possible product we can have. And it's Mr. Jenkins.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
All of us. I just have a please.
You're welcome to come up here and
Come to the mic, please.
My pleas to county council and to planning commission, but we talk about it a lot. My pleas for us to please, sir, sit down and put our minds together and see what we can do about affordable housing. And the reason why I said that, if we don't, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will never be able to afford a home in Jasper County. And from today, let us please, sir, sit down and let us see how we can go forward about doing something about affordable housing for Jasper County. Because we know what the average citizen make in Jasper County. And the average home now in Jasper County, I think, is $300,000. And we gonna have a problem. If we don't address that now, we gonna have a problem. So that's my plea to county council and to administration and to the citizen of this county. We really need to do something about affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Have a second.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank y'all. Have a good evening.
On the 19th.